In the vast majority, everything that we think is truth, in reality, is a pack of lies. And the thing that this ruthless criminal elite fears most is extraterrestrial visitation. For one reason only, because it is a power that they cannot control. It is a scientific technological power that they are unable to stop, because these beings have technical capabilities that to us are simply magic. To tell you one thing, they have perfect control over human health. That is, they can make a physical body indefinitely young and alive. That is, they have defeated even death. So I call these societies that have achieved this fantastic feat absolute societies or absolute humanity. Here, these absolute humankind have, for the past 70 years, started a particular project, which concerns us, which began at the moment when, in 1945, the first atomic bomb was exploded, which was the Trinity bomb, which was tested in the United States after all the studies of Oppenheimer, Fermi, Einstein, etc., etc. From that moment on, the extraterrestrials realized that we had embarked on a path of no return. Because once you spread radioactive particles in the environment that remain dangerous for hundreds of thousands of years, you don't come to terms with it anymore, because these madmen have experimented with the atom bomb, but have no solution for all the disasters that radioactivity entails. And they have done some crazy things, even experiments on the unsuspecting American population. Think of them sending soldiers on picnics to the 0 point where the atomic bomb exploded. Because then, these madmen, they wanted to see over time what kind of effects radioactivity had on human health, because they didn't know at that time. There were Madame Curie's studies, but it was all in the making. By the way, Madame Curie, who died many years ago, is still inside a lead coffin, because she was studying fissile materials, and her body became radioactive, and therefore it is dangerous to be around her. So these societies have started for the last 70 years, after having had diplomatic meetings with the major governments of the planet, and also the slightly less important ones. We have so many testimonies to this effect. The powers that be have denied them permission for contact. They do not violate free will, because for these beings what we consider to be a religious matter, for them it is science. That is, they say, you are fools because if you believe in God, in Jesus Christ, in Buddha, or whoever you like, Krishna, etc., how can a scientific entity, called the body, contain such a religious belief that an atheist will say, it does not exist? If you are the spirit intelligence, and you are inside a body, it is obvious that the spiritual discourse aligns with the scientific discourse. So there is a science of matter, but there is also a science of spirit that has to explain what are the natural laws that make an intelligent spiritual entity, an intelligent light energy, enter an organism for a certain time and begin a cohabitation relationship that determines what we call life, biological life. Therefore, since they know, even through their projections and calculations, what a terrible fate we are heading for, they began to transmit knowledge. Since the powerful refused to make their presence known to mankind, they began to selecting individuals with specific characteristics that they first examined. And they began, through these individuals, to transmit information that these gentlemen then had to share with mankind. We had so many of them. There was the great golden wave, let's call it that, of contactism in the United States of America, which produced characters that then had an international resonance, especially George Adamski, then Howard Menger, George Van Tassel, Dino Crespidon from Brazil, Eugenio Siragusa from Italy, Giorgio Bongiovanni, a contactist who was also stigmatized, etc., etc. Through these men who undertake a real mission on behalf of mankind, they have transmitted information. So I have been studying this information for 34 years and then linking it to scientific facts discovered by our scientists. So, I know that a given thing will happen, I just have to wait for Earth science to discover it. For example, in the 70s, during the Apollo missions, which the extraterrestrials followed all of them, even Apollo 13 was sabotaged by them, because these madmen wanted to do a nuclear test on the moon, risking to bring the moon down on us, and so they sabotaged Apollo 13, which could not land on the moon and was sent home together with the nuclear warhead it was carrying. And because they did crazy things on the moon, in the end, after the Apollo 17 mission, they said, "You've made us really fed up. You can't come anymore. We won't let you come to the moon anymore." I mean, they put an embargo because extraterrestrials on the moon have been there for over 100,000 years. There are plenty of bases there. That's why they made and make us see the moon gray. But the moon is not gray. It has the colors of the Earth, because the moon is made up of the same chemical elements as the Earth: calcium, magnesium, iron, etc., etc., etc. So there is a great manipulation of information to lock our heads inside the cage, because when we have agreed to keep our heads inside the cage, we ourselves are the controllers of the lock. That is, we get annoyed if someone wants to open the door of the cell. Therefore, what I am going to show you today comes from research that I have done to connect the messages of these beings and what is really happening in the world. Before I start with the exposition, I want to invite a very dear friend, the representative of the Ancona group, who logistically took it upon himself to organize this meeting. So, I call Thomas Matteucci.
Try, yes, you know. So, hello all friends, welcome, thanks for being here. Thanks to Pierre, of course, for accepting our invitation.
Actually, Thomas wanted to give the lecture, but I told him, "Come on, let me do it, please."
Bye.
Joking, it's very tense.
Thanks, Pierre, really for being here. So I'll be brief, very brief. To leave him to continue, of course, I'll introduce myself. I'm Thomas Matteucci, and I just wanted to point out that here in Ancona, there is an operating group that has been active since 2016, which is consistent with the statutory lines of the association Nuovo Cielo, Nuova Terra, which is the promoter of this dissemination day. We are not only concerned with shedding light on the multiple implications of the phenomenon of extraterrestrial visitation, but we seek above all to study in order to put into practice the message that these highly evolved civilizations from other worlds bring us. The most meaningful way to conform to this, in a world where justice and truth are only a faint illusion, is to engage, to put our faces to social activism and all forms of pro-life action. In this sense, therefore, we collaborate with and support other authentic and genuine realities that we have been able to touch with our own hands and that honestly work towards this goal. Obviously, I won't go into the details of our work here in Ancona, but if you would also like to get involved, you can. We invite you to leave your contact details outside this room. There is a reception table set up. You can leave your contact details and we will get back to you, because we periodically organize presentation days. That is, in relation to the work we do. One last thing, an invitation I would like to extend to you before giving the floor to Pierre. On Saturday, July 1st, there will be a dinner, a solidarity dinner, organized by us here in Ancona in the Baracala area, where we will donate the proceeds to the Funima International On Loose Association. which is one of the associations we support. It will be a pleasant setting where we can get together, enjoy good food, have fun, listen to good music, and at the same time, above all, be the instrument of an act of solidarity.
I'll come too, eh? I'll be there too.
There! I didn't mean it.
Because I've heard the menu, so I guess I'll come.
Pierre will be there too. So, on that note, thank you. We also have an info stand with respect to the activities of Funima International with some little products. Visit it, and there you will also find the poster so that you can sign up for this dinner that we do and will propose. So, I thank you from the bottom of my heart and leave it to Pierre to continue. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tommy. Did you see the movie? I don't remember. Noah. The film about Noah with the actor, the one who played the gladiator called Russell Crowe. At one point, the wife comes up to Noah and says, "What did he say to you?" And Noah looks at her and says, "He's going to destroy everything." God had told him that that level of corruption and depravity of that society, some 6,000 years ago, was no longer bearable, and that he was going to start a process that would cleanse the planet of that humanity, that from being a positive enzyme had become a virus that was destroying Mother Earth. Here we are again, after 6,000 years, in the exact same situation. That is, worse. And I say this because Jesus says so. It will be worse than in the days of the flood. At a certain point in the film, drops of water begin to fall and Noah says, "It has begun." Here, I say to you today, this process has begun that will bring about a momentous change in humanity. For those approaching these topics for the first time, the cultural, psychological shock is considerable, because they are themes, topics, concepts that radically upset our common feeling. And this cannot but be obvious, because if humanity, with its conception of life, with its way of living, has produced this catastrophe, the new world cannot be made by the old man. The new world, as Giordano Bruno anticipated 600 years ago, must be made by Homo novus. And how is the human being to be reformed? Simple. With new knowledge, that is, by re-educating him. This is the most important task that the extraterrestrials are carrying out directly and indirectly through their instruments. To re-educate the humanity of the Earth, that is, obviously, those who accept to do this work, and the others, will follow their common destiny through the inviolable law of cause and effect, which the Orientals call karma, which is not a religious belief. It is a natural law. You sow what you reap. Cause, effect. In physics, it is called action, reaction. This law overpowers us. That's where our troubles come from our bad action that produces, hello Piero, which produces the catastrophe we are experiencing, which is irreversible, because the world's powerful figures no longer have the logistical, scientific, technological capacity to solve the problem that these madmen have created, unfortunately, with the unconscious complicity of the peoples. And when I speak of the peoples, especially the rich peoples, because the poor people in Africa, or those in the poorest parts of the planet, they cannot do anything. They have no resources. They have no money. They have no technology. They have no education. They have no computers. They have no schools, and therefore they are there trying to make ends meet by finding a piece of bread and a glass of water. So this situation has begun. Unfortunately, the minds of these people don't change on this either. So even of their problems, they try to make a business out of it. They are crazy people, unfortunately. They hold the reins of society, that is, they are in charge of our rulers who count for nothing. Have you seen Miss Maloney? Did you see Miss Maloney before the election? Dr. Jekyll? Do you see her after the election? Mr. Hyde says exactly the opposite. Everything that was white before is now black. Everything that was black before is now white. With no problem, with a brazenness, a total lack of shame, to use no other word. Insane. I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror if I were someone like that. In fact, I entered politics many years ago. Then I ran like hell. So these beings bring us knowledge. With science, conscience. This knowledge is able, if applied, to create an unthinkable variation in our lives. I experienced this because I could not have imagined 34 years ago that a young railwayman could today take on a social, public, dissemination role like the one I play. For years I did it with television. I worked in Italy, especially with Rai for the Voyager program, and then my works, my documentaries, that is, those that I wrote, which were the fruit of my research, traveled the world. They went to the north, the south, the east, the west. Then at a certain point, because I was able, since they existed, to have a direct interaction with these beings, from a certain moment on, it was they who gave me indications of what to do. So, at a certain point, they said to me, "Listen, you know what we say to you. Get out of television and devote yourself to divulging directly to the people." New web technologies were born. Today, it's a YouTube channel that has almost 100,000 subscribers, and therefore, I can speak to an important segment of civil society. And this is important, but it was unimaginable 34 years ago. Because when they tell me do this, I do it because I know that when they tell me something, it implies an important project. So here I am. I started with rooms with 3 people. Now you are more than 400. So I mean, there is evolution. Thank you. So information. Already in ancient times, this concept, from Dante Alighieri, was a concept of forming your identity, your personality. We identify with personality, but it is not so. Personality is a superstructure that we build from childhood to adulthood. Unfortunately, this superstructure becomes rigid and very difficult to transform. That is, it gives rise to the instinctive dogmatism of the favorite team. Thus, today, the PD political party is a horror mask of what the left was decades ago. Yet, people continue to vote PD, because I am part of that group. That is, we rely on fanaticism. We are fans instead of watching what the hell those we choose to represent us are up to. So, very important information, and the starting point for a great change of self. Because from my very practical and I think very logical point of view, following something that does not produce practical facts in our lives is a waste of time. So if I take on new knowledge, this knowledge must improve my quality of life. It improved it. It has not been easy, because there is the transition phase, which is very difficult, to take off the old clothes and put on the new ones. But it can be done. And these beings have given us so much knowledge and so much, shall we say, information to be able to do it. So, I need a laser. I am a Jedi. I don't know if you knew that. Hey, hey. So without my lightsaber, I feel naked. I lent it to Yoda the other day. He didn't give it back. So all right, here comes the lightsaber. So on my website, which is this one here, There's a lot of information. And most importantly, if you go to the section Free Resources, you can download about 20 books in electronic PDF format, which are a collection that I have selected of texts that have been fundamental in my personal evolution. Then, Free Resources, click and a page will open where you can download this material. There are still people like me who love paper because I touch it. So if you want a good portion of these texts, we also have them printed at a cost that it would cost you more to print them yourself. At the copy shop, the PDF, we have a pretty nice edition. So if you want them, just write to info@cosmicshop.it. Then there is my YouTube channel. So with lots of lectures, interviews, which is another important reservoir of information, where there is, of course, the image that in the book, for objective reasons of course, cannot be present, as well as in a video. Subscribe if you have not done so the channel expands. Then there is Giorgio Bongiovanni's site, where Giorgio, I repeat, contactist and stigmatized, publishes the messages he receives from the cosmic extraterrestrial world and the divine world, because, as a stigmatized person, he too has his own YouTube channel with other videos that will help you understand many things. For those who want to stay informed about the things that I am doing, just go to the Events section. And if you want, instead, to participate online in the seminars that are in-depth meetings on the issues that I have taken are a bit like the way I make documentaries today, where I can express without censorship, as I used to do on TV, everything that I discover. So if you would like information about the seminars, eventi@piergiorgiocarria.it. You can also subscribe to a newsletter, generically one a week, where I publish information, articles I write, and events. Then I have an Instagram page, a Telegram channel, where you will also get notifications of things I plan to do there. The next event, I mentioned the moon earlier, will be in Florence, let's say the suburbs, Calenzano, the second installment of the seminar dedicated to the conquest of the moon. Here too, the strategy of distraction, dividi et impera. Since we can no longer go to the moon because extraterrestrials have put an embargo on it, power itself filters into society the opposite hypothesis. NASA lied to us. We have never been to the moon. They put out fakes, they shuffle the cards, and so we fight amongst ourselves. The usual who's for, who's against, the pro versus, the no versus. But in fact, they start a fratricidal war in society. And between the two disputants, the third enjoys. It is always them. So strategy of distraction. So we went to the moon. On the moon, the astronauts had very strong experiences with extraterrestrials, but as soon as they returned, they were threatened. They could no longer speak. In fact, most of the lunar astronauts left NASA, instead of having a great career. So I will tell all these things by showing the materials. Second episode, Calenzano, 18 June 2023. A whole day so that I can massacre your neurons for good. The topics I touch on in my seminars are many from a thematic point of view. For example, this one, The Last War of the Antichrist, is a theological, prophetic, political, geopolitical explanation of what is hidden in the events that are happening now in Ukraine. Because if God really exists, and He does exist, God has plans. So when He made creation, God had a plan, and Christ tells us so. God's plan was the kingdom. In fact, Jesus says to the elect, "Come, blessed of my Father, take possession of the kingdom, prepared for you from the foundation of the world." That is, since the world was created. So since we are in that theologically defined phase, end times, which is not the end of the world, then I will read a message. In this work that I have only done online, I will explain all these things. Birth, death, and reincarnation, revelation of the masters, the cosmic masters about the great mysteries of life, where, exactly, these beings speak to us about the science of the spirit, and about how great the creation of the human being is. Father Vissarione, how good to see you. Hello. Thank you for coming. Love conquers all.
A gift for you.
No, call me by my name. Thank you.
God bless you.
Yesterday I was at the event in Rimini. Father Vissarione was also there. He is a hermit and an exorcist Orthodox priest who lives in Greece. Goodness me, he said he knew about me and, anyway, he came to the OM of Marina Tonini, where I was last night, and today. Thank you that you came. It's a great honor. Thank you, thank you. We are one. Religions, beyond the external aspects of rituals, all contain the same truth: brotherhood, love, justice. They are values that we must recover and make them the founding pillars of our societies. Otherwise, we will all end up like the Greeks, the Romans, all societies, the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, the Assyro-Babylonians. Why do our societies collapse? They collapse because the human being of this world is obstinate in violating natural laws, cause and effect. You see, we have been told that this does not exist in Christianity. It is false. The gospel is centered on the eternal concepts, which are scientific, sacred concepts, of karma and reincarnation, law of cause and effect. What we sow, we reap, and reincarnation. Jesus says this to Nicodemus: you must be born again if you want to know the kingdom of God. So we must be born again in water and spirit. Water is matter, because our body at the molecular level is 99% water. We are a purer water than seawater, which is 96% pure. So think what a situation. Other topics: sacred geometry, where I explain, through a path of science, the reality of God's existence. God does not create at random. God creates according to number and uses what is called sacred mathematics, the golden section, Fibonacci progression, fractal structures. Mysteries of history, the immortal prince and the mysteries of the Musine, where there is this very important character which I talk about in this documentary, which, excuse me, a seminar that is in any case part of the long series of karma, reincarnation. Then ufology, of course, UFOs, lying at all costs, where, taking my cue from the revelations that the Pentagon has started to make since 2017, I explain everything that these gentlemen are doing and what they are up to. Hot topic a few years ago: the opening of the gates of hell in Rome and the dark secrets of the elite, symbolisms and occult meanings on the diabolical plans for world domination. Because when they put the green pass for the workers, that was a satanic rite, where the Italian people were immolated to Lucifer. Yes.
I have to give the information of the service. Security is telling me that, unfortunately, people standing in the aisles have to leave the hall because otherwise they block the event. So if they can, they have to sit in the foyer, unfortunately.
Yes, so friends, security says that standing people cannot be in the hall. Hey, nothing. Stay in the foyer. I hope the sound's coming through. Unfortunately, the hall is saturated. We looked for a hall of 400 seats. We didn't imagine such a large turnout. We are very sorry also because, in the face of all these situations, even logical and obvious ones, the situation has not been, let's say, offered, as was agreed. I don't know if there's any free seat in the hall. There's a seat here, pointed out to me, so maybe someone can sit down. Tommy, next. What do I know? Sports hall, what shall we do? Then I'll leave room, of course, for your questions both on the topics I'm dealing with today and on what you want to ask. So, End Times and New Era, Chronicles of the Great Change. At the beginning I had an idea of how to develop today's meeting. Then in the end I decided, let's say, I was inspired to change and give a lot of information from a scientific point of view more than extraterrestrial, while keeping information coming from these beings. So we entered, more or less around the 80s, we started to enter the age of Aquarius. So we come out of the age of Pisces, which lasted just over 2,000 years, and we entered the age of Aquarius. Now, as the cosmos influences us, the astrological question is a real question, because it stems from a very ancient science that was developed thousands of years ago in Atlantis, which was then given to the Egyptians. The Egyptians passed it on to the Greek priests or Greek sages, such as Plato, and it has come down to us. Obviously, not the boorish horoscope. If you meet your love at noon, early afternoon, or in the evening, but it is, let's say, the study of the influence that cosmic forces have on the human being. Incidentally, the great spiritual scientist Rudolf Steiner developed agriculture and the biodynamic zoo technique by considering precisely the cosmic forces that influence life on Earth. Thus, from an age where there were two forces, the age of fish, this is the symbol, which are the force of faith and the force of doubt. The force of faith has produced orthodoxy, dogma. The force of doubt has produced science, as it was until recently, because today it is science with a capital H, meaning a science that was sold to the interests of the multinationals. Therefore, they make that interest is no longer science. It has become dogma, because, we tell you, that's how it is, full stop, no way, that's not science. The age of the aquarium that has the symbol of the man pouring water. Water is knowledge. Water is what vivifies the spiritual body of the human being, symbolized by these 7 lotus flowers, which are, shall we say, nourished by truth. This is the cosmic man. In the sign of Aquarius there is the extraterrestrial, because only the initiate, only the extraterrestrial can transmit to the common man the new knowledge that will enable him to conquer death, to overcome it, and to reach the summit of great eternal knowledge. Sorry. Thus, knowledge will enable mankind to have the true knowledge of what we are, of what God is. You see here the sun symbol happily towering over and watching the entrance of the new age, and it will also enable us in the future to conquer death, to conquer disease, to conquer aging, which is nothing but a form of organic decay, because there is also a Nobel Prize winner, I think from the 20s, who proved that virtually the human cell is eternal. You just have to do one thing, cleanse it perfectly of all the physical, psychic, and spiritual toxins, with which we pollute it through our lifestyle. What makes us sick is not the virus, the bacteria. What makes us sick is our lifestyle. That is the cause. So if we want to get well, we have to change our lifestyle, not just take pills. What is to be understood by the end of the world? Message received by Eugenio Siragusa on the 6th of April in the year 1973. It has always been heard, and in these times in particular, that the end of the world is imminent. Most of the people of this world have believed and still believe in a physical end to the planet they inhabit. But it is not so. There are cycles of growth that govern this planet of yours. These cycles can have a negative terminal or a positive terminal, and this in relation to the work that in this particular cycle builds humanity either in the negative sense or in the positive sense. This macrocosmic cell, hence planet Earth is a living being, I would add, that you call Earth lives its own cosmogonic life. And men are nothing more than processing enzymes, transformers of its nature, as well as its evolution. It is logical that if these enzymes produce such imbalances as to produce a general malaise in its natural order, they undergo, namely, the enzymes, that is, us, through a strict law, the urge to change the negative order into a positive order. And this in relation to the will of the law of love that governs the whole of creation. It is, therefore, true that to a cause corresponds an effect. So if we are the authors of our troubles, we also have the power to bring a solution to them. If our lifestyle produces disease, we have the power to overcome it. What do we lack? The knowledge, the support of an expert to help us, to accompany us in this process of revision and mutation of our lifestyle, which, of course, is not merely a material fact. It is a fact primarily of changing our vision of life, meaning forget that politicians will be able to provide a solution to the problems that they themselves create, because the vision of life, that is the republic, that is the state structure that politicians have, is the old one. It is not the new one. Therefore, we need not more politicians who are always the old ones as heads. We need new men who are wise men and full of love, not scoundrels who preach well and then rage badly. That is, they do the opposite of what they promised us. This is the history of politics in Italy and across the planet. So, cause and effect. So if the people suffer, the people are accomplices of power because they look to power for a solution, when it is power itself that creates the problems. Then they are good. They commit crimes, offenses. They put a tombstone on it. They call it a state secret. So we don't know who killed Moro. We don't know who killed Kennedy. We don't know anything, because it is a state secret. But when the state puts a secret, it is because it is guilty. It's so easy. There is even the confessed murderer of Kennedy. No one has succeeded in bringing this gentleman before a massive media. They all refused. Just as there is the confessed murderer, a certain Pieczenik, who killed Moro, a CIA man, an American. He said it. There is even the interview. Giulietto Chiesa published it at the time. Yet they still continue to tell us that they do not know who killed Moro. Who killed Moro? Those gentlemen in the stars and stripes, because it bothered them what he wanted to do. So going back to the message, to a cause corresponds an effect, and it is still true that to the negative effect corresponds the need for intervention, renewal, purification, and therefore judgment, because there are higher entities to which we are accountable, whether we like it or not. One is called God, but God is not a creed. He is a being that has real power and makes history. We never thought about it. But when God stigmatizes Bongiovanni, Padre Pio, or someone else, he is doing geopolitics. When he sends Saint Francis, God is doing politics. When he sends Joan of Arc, God is doing politics, because he changes the fortunes of war. But because we have our heads stuck in the nonsense of theological religious deception, we never manage to put two and two together. God always intervenes in the history of mankind, if only because we are his creature. Therefore, we must move from a silly concept that produces no real effects, if not negative effects, in our lives, to an actuating concept where this intelligence, this being who has power, can intervene and change the fortunes of mankind, because he has absolute power. He is omnipotent. So, this generation of yours has produced imbalances of considerable negative intensity, and such as to require the intervention of a process that must, without fail, produce a judgment, and the judgment will not be the end of the world, but the end of the generation, but not of the entire generation, because there are those, I would add, who are theologically called the elect. That is why we are on earth, that is, the extraterrestrials, to warn you that the process is close to ending, and that the judgment could come any day now, or better, at the moment established from above. The prelude of the judgment must not be allowed to escape you, for evident and clear are the warnings, and indisputable are the accusations. You cannot say, "I did not know." You cannot be justified. Rather, prepare to pray, if you want to save souls, for it has been said and written, "All things shall pass away, but my word, that is, his law, shall never pass away." Therefore, it is good for you to know. It is good for you to know what is to be understood by the end of the world, and it is good, again, to know that the kingdom of God on earth has been promised, and will come to pass in this world, which will be clothed with new light and new life by the holy will of God and his archetypes. The archetypes are the ones who imprinted this humanity. Now the message speaks of our earth living a cosmogonic life of its own. Let us go into the details of what that means. So we are the enzyme, and therefore, in terms of time as well, our lifespan, compared to the great planet that contains us, is extremely short. So our growth cycles are septenaries, 7, 14, 21, and so on and so forth. The Earth's cycles are also septennial, but on gigantic time scales. Every 700 million years, we have a period called cosmic Earth cycle, or cosmic Earth growth. Humanity was implanted on planet Earth a good 623 million years ago. This is the true date of the beginning of human history on Earth. It is also called the Earth Mother cycle. At the completion of each Earth Mother cycle, that is, at the end of 700 million years, there is a major change that corresponds to a dimensional shift in the planet. First, mineral dimension. Second, vegetable dimension. Third, animal dimension. Fourth dimension. We appear. We are the fourth element that comes into play. But since we have to experiment, in order to acquire wisdom and knowledge, through experimentation in the third corporeal dimension, which is the animal, we have 600 million years to develop ethical stability. Behold, these 600 million years have ended in the year 2000, and we have developed everything, except, as Berlinguer called it, the moral question, that is, we are sub-zero, that is, humanity is moving towards an immorality that is becoming an ideology and a way of life. So we are radically subverting the natural order, so nature will react. And, of course, it changes the planet dimensionally, and also us, that is, the plant, animal, human beings that live on it. These changes cause events of enormous planetary magnitude, because the mutation affects all the kingdoms of the planet. And if humanity at that moment is not in balance with the universal laws, These changes can be very violent. The Earth's cosmic cycle of 700 million years is in turn divided into smaller cycles of 100 million years. Even at the end of each cycle, under the cycle of 100 million years, the planet has convulsions on a global level, which then affect the kingdoms within it. The two cycles of 700 and 100 million years described above are then subdivided into a whole series of subcycles that, in turn, always bring about changes, both structural to the planet and to the beings that inhabit it. In the year 2000, a subcycle, or planetary anemic convulsion, of 100 million years has come to completion. So when the planet reaches that age, it must automatically go through a molt, just as the human being at 14 years of age passes through puberty. The mature age begins. Then, the woman becomes fertile, and so on and so forth. And the Earth in the year 2000 has reached the age of 2,700,000,000 years. That is, it is 700, 700, first, second, third dimension. 600 million years ago, the fourth dimension began, with the entry into the third dimension of the animal anthropoid, the spirit dimension, which was grafted into the anthropoid, created through manipulations and adaptations by solar beings, those we call deities, was implanted into the terrestrial anthropoid. After an aquatic animal was chosen, that was a dinosaur. It's called a plumed serpent. In the East, still the serpent or dragon is worshipped as a symbol of the origin of mankind. So, as the 600 million years go by, from 2000 onwards, forces begin to be unleashed that must forcibly bring about a change, a mutation of the planet. Unfortunately, in a situation where our management of the planet has produced further imbalances that will greatly exacerbate what already by the law of nature must happen anyway. Therefore, they will bring about an extraordinary, these, let us say, natural forces, combined with our bad actions, a grandiose human, planetary and cosmic transformation. To summarize, we have completed the sixth planetary soul convulsion of 100 million years, and 23 years ago we entered the last 100 million years, where we are to experience a society of peace, love, and justice. The extraterrestrials are here to help us cross this ladder, which is very, very risky, because we have tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, in addition to civil nuclear power plants, which in any case produce very serious pollution. So, therefore, at the conclusion of this cycle of 100 million years, having already lived 23 almost, there are 99,999,977 years to go, so we still have time. Let's relax. On that date, the Earth will reach the age of 2,800,000,000 years, and the fourth cycle of the Earth's mother race of 700 million years will come to an end. There the changes will be truly crazy, because we spirit, if we can get there as God commands, in the true sense of the word, the transformation of our structure in which we incarnate will be fabulous. We will no longer die. It will be a gigantic event, and it will be 12,000 years that is then part of the sub-cycles, and the new human generation must begin. The extraterrestrials, therefore, have been admonishing us all these decades. Change, stop nuclear power, stop pollution, stop exploiting the Earth, stop extinguishing animal and plant races. Yes, nothing. Stop with wars. Nothing. Stop it with social injustice. Yes, hello. In fact, the situation has become worse and worse, because today a very small group of human beings, about 8 families alone, own almost half of the wealth of the entire planet. There is a hallucinating situation. Families who alone have almost 50% of the wealth of the planet can buy everything. In fact, they have also bought it because they are the ones who control the printing of money. Has it ever occurred to you that money is a human product? So, someone has to make it? And what money does, of course, is print it and buy everything with it. The apparent difficulty or abstruseness of economics, of high finance, is just so that we don't realize how simple it is. The game. It's a monopoly. They print the chips. And we have to work our asses off to get some, and get by. Mario Draghi, in a press conference, responding to a journalist who asked him, "But can the ECB go bankrupt?" And he gives a mocking, typical little laugh and says, "No, the ECB cannot go bankrupt because it has unlimited resources. But if you have unlimited resources, if people are starving, if families are suffering because of lack of money, you are a criminal. You are at fault. You are responsible." They tell us this on our faces, but we don't understand because we have our heads in the little box. So all these warnings. Thank you. Money is the most effective instrument of slavery. We have it in our heads all the time. Even the boys have managed to move that thing there and put the euro symbol on it. Nobody wants to realize that the apocalypse has already begun. The process. What does that mean? Apocalypse. Revelation, that is, God reveals his plans to the world, and the effects of our causes become apparent. That is, revelation is the liberation of consciences through didactic facts, information, or through world facts. Because in the face of the truths that will become apparent, we will all understand. We will understand. So, who still believes that aliens do not exist, and when they will manifest globally, who will be able to say it is not true? Nobody. So the process of revelation is a process of effects from generated causes and revelations, of entities coming from outside, including the divine world, that will make us understand the truth, either by salvation or condemnation in relation to our works. Cause, effect. "Behold, I am coming soon," says Jesus in the Apocalypse, "and I will render to each person my wages according to their works." Not religious beliefs. Ora et labora. Prayer is a great weapon of good. But if you don't do works, it is like eating and not working. You get fat and sick. So we must pray and do good works. Not only that, we must unite, because for what will happen in the future alone, it will be very difficult to survive. The process involving the end of time is in its critical phase and, as I have already said, the hyperchaotic point may be reached very soon. It should be known that the planet will not end. There will be no end of the world, but well, I say, the end of a human generation that has voluntarily fallen into the self-destructive abyss. So, the end of the world is understood as worldliness. It is the end of a system, of a way of life. So politics will fall, banks will fall, and religious institutions that have become power structures and that also deceive humanity will fall. Obviously, the men of religion who will remain faithful to the dictates of Christ, those are truly priests of Christ. Scripture says, Revelation 21, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth, that is, this one, had passed away." Therefore, epochal, geographical, climatic events will occur in the transition to the new age. The new heaven also means a different heaven. Let us go and see some scientific data. Thus we understand that Scripture is not a creed that I can give a damn about. Prophecy is an act of God's mercy that warns us beforehand so that, then, we are not caught unprepared by the event. Man saved. Sorry, man forewarned is forearmed, it is said. Exactly so. But God announces plans and things that will happen, because we make prophecies today. For example, the weather. Why can we prophesy what the weather will be in 6 days? Because we have algorithms and computers that make calculations that would be almost impossible for the human mind to make. God has a mind of infinite calculation. So given the conditions of the moment, God tells you, based on what the law predicts, in a while this will happen, unless you change, because prophecy always has a possibilistic meaning. But if we change the causes, then the effects change. What did Jesus say to those he healed? Your faith has saved you, but sin no more or worse will happen to you. What is sin? The violation of a natural law. Do not lie, and we lie. Not committing adultery, which is not just a matter of the marriage bed, is not adulterating your life, the lives of others and the planet by polluting it. Atomic energy wars. Adultery is a much broader term. It is not just ultimately about a human fact of two people cheating on each other or being faithful. On the other hand, Cocciante, the singer, solved the problem. So, prophecy announces scientific facts. Comet Shoemaker-Levy. 9 was discovered on the 25th of March, 1993, by American astronomers Eugene and Carolyn Shoemaker and Canadian astronomer David Levy, Shoemaker-Levy. It had never happened. It had never happened that a comet was discovered in an orbit that was not around the Sun, because comets never hit planets. Comets only hit suns. Why does this comet strike Jupiter? Because Jupiter is the ancient father. Scripture says, and at a certain point, God, after creation, goes to rest. So the ancient father is Zeus, Jupiter. The father Jupiter went to rest. Therefore, today, it is a sun at rest. For the first time since astronomy has existed, so since Galileo, astronomers discover a comet pointing at Jupiter. This had never happened. Interactions between Jupiter and the comet had caused it to break up into 21 fragments. This is a picture of the comet. An operation was launched to record the impact involving several observatories on the ground and several probes in space, because it had never happened. Between the 16th and 22nd of July, 94 fragments of the comet impacted on Jupiter. Now, since God is number, the number 21, what is it? The for us. Maturity. Jupiter is ready to become what it has always been. This is a short video of the impact of one of the pieces. See, there's one still in flight here, and one impacts here. The collision of the fragment called G-spot, I don't know why they called it that. The collision of fragment G took place on the 18th of July, 1994, and unleashed an energy equivalent to 6 million megatons. That is, one impact of the 21 was as powerful as 750 times the Earth's nuclear arsenal. Think what a bang. The total explosions of the 9 main fragments, so not even all 21, was equal. So fragment G, 750 times the energy of the entire world's nuclear arsenal. 9 fragments, 6,000 times the entire world's nuclear arsenal. Because Jupiter has to be rekindled, so it takes a big blowtorch. Look at this picture, these two pictures. Basically the comets, the points of the comets, have created a ring of impacts around the gas giant. In order for the planet, that is, Jupiter, to be harmoniously and, let's say, evenly impacted, for the necessary processes to start. My spiritual father, Eugenio Siragusa, spoke of this fact because it was truly epochal, as the astronomers themselves said. The ancient sun Jupiter and the comet Shoemaker-Levy. Initially, the solar system had Jupiter as its sun, as a result of the interpenetration of a hydrogen cloud, then fertilized by a comet. Comets are called cosmic zooids. That is, they are the universal spermatozoa, which graft into the ovum, sun, a new dynamic which is then reflected in the evolution of the system of that sun there. So, for a short time the system, our solar system, was dual. We had the present sun plus Jupiter shining, which is smaller. So, two suns shone there. Later, the ancient father Jupiter extinguished, becoming a black hole and giving way to the present sun, the seat of the Christic solar logos. It is no coincidence that the Jesus Hominum Salvator trigram is inside a sun, the trigram of Saint Bernardine, a sun with 12 rays. What is 12? The number of the zodiac, that is, of all the constellations that surround us. Therefore, they are always astronomical parameters, not just spiritual or energetic. Today, some of Jupiter's satellites have air and water and are already habitable, and are even inhabited, I might add. And the start for the new insemination of life in the other universal macrocells of the solar system, that is, the outer planets, was given by the comet that impacted on Jupiter in '94. I will now explain why. This informational will comes from the central monastic core of the Milky Way. Every galaxy has a sun which acts as the harmonizer of all the activities of the suns of the individual solar systems, because, of course, the galaxy, which although gigantic is a large body, must move in harmony. Therefore, there is a core at the center of the galaxy which is called the monastic sun. The Maya already knew this fact, and from there the orders depart which must harmonize the activity of all the suns. This was discovered by our science, which years ago discovered that energy waves arrive from the center of the galaxy, which they do not quite understand what they are. And these, let us say, thrusts, then give rise to cometary activity, because it is the comets that are the vehicles that bring the new information to the suns. From that point on, that is, from Shoemaker-Levy 94, Jupiter is continually struck by comets. For example, this one I took at random. On the 19th of July, 2009, Australian amateur astronomer Anthony Wesley photographed the track of a new cometary impact. Even a comet the size of planet Earth had struck Jupiter. NASA didn't notice, nobody noticed, but this astronomer discovered the track, which remained on Jupiter's very dense, gaseous atmosphere. On October 17, 2012, this gentleman, Glenn Orton, a NASA scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, says, "The changes we are seeing on Jupiter are on a global scale. That is, they involve the entire planet. Such changes have not been seen for decades, and some regions have never been of Jupiter, obviously in the state we see them now. At the same time, we have never seen so many things, namely comets, hitting Jupiter," he explained in a statement. Right now, we are trying to understand why this is happening. Actually, they know. They know it very well, and they have divulged it. These are the three red spots. After the comet impacted, two more giant storms appeared, like the big red spot. These are the proportions, because Jupiter is immense. So the red spot is twice the size of the Earth in diameter, in length, Then these two new storms appeared. Now they have been reabsorbed because since this process started, NASA has sent a probe to monitor Jupiter around the clock. Sorry, the Juno probe. It is no coincidence that Juno is the mother of the gods. They use these codes. Another fact, however, that proves that Jupiter is a sun, it is a sun, because even before the comet, Jupiter emits a surplus of energy equal to 2.5 times that which it receives from the sun. That is to say, even though it is off, Jupiter emits energy. Now, obviously, I couldn't go into everything today, but if you see the mutations, they are really big. The grafting of the cosmic zooid onto Jupiter, that is, the Shoemaker-Levy comet, could, before long, fertilize on this star a new solar dynamic, and therefore the possible vision of two parallel solar systems. That is, we would have two suns. What does the prophecy say? Zechariah 14:6-7. On that day there shall be neither light nor cold nor frost. It shall be one day, the Lord knows it. There shall be neither day nor night. Towards evening the light shall shine. For when one of the suns is setting, the other is rising. Therefore there will be no more night, at most there will be the light, let us say, of the late sunset. But there is a time when two suns will be seen in the sky. So prophecy announces events that will happen. Therefore, a new sky, because if a second sun is ignited, there will be a different sky. And this is one of the facts that will happen. The ignition of the second sun is necessary, because the energy of this sun cannot give sufficient energy to the outer planets, Pluto and others, which we have not yet discovered, because the birth of life in the outer planets is programmed. That is, the Earth will pass into the fourth dimension, and in the outer planets the third dimension will develop, and then, in the distant future, there will be humanity there as well. This process has already begun, and I will show you. Because already Jupiter is beginning to emit, in an important way, but above all it is emitting, our Sun, much more energy, because it has to change the frequency of matter. We said it yesterday in Rimini. Frequency creates form. Frequency creates matter. From heaven to earth. Message from Giorgio Bongiovanni, May 6, 2008. We would like to remind you that you have long since entered the irreversible phase, that is, from the hypercritical point you have passed to the hyperchaotic point, which in our language means precisely that of no return. Warming trend, or rather, trend in the average temperature of the planet. So the average planet is warming up a lot more, but it's not that we're going to have more heat. We're going to have extreme weather, extreme frost waves, extreme heat waves, extreme droughts, extreme floods, waterfalls. So right now we have all these situations. Droughts, terrible frost waves, Niagara Falls freezing, terrible fires. The other year in Australia there was a hell of a lot going on, but it's still happening today. Melting ice, obviously. Then the flora and fauna are affected so much. Catastrophic floods. Well, I'd say we're in it, aren't we? Snowfall in the Sahara, look at that. So facts are happening in such a way that those at power know about these things, and as usual create confusion, because these are so crazy that they don't want to change the system. They don't want to change it, and therefore they prefer to deceive us. Then one would say to me, but excuse me, but if this is really happening, they too will die. Do you know what they are doing? They are digging themselves super luxurious bunkers. These are crazy, but crazy in a psychiatric way. Let's go and see some more scenes. In the end, one only has to look at the facts to get out of the controversy. Lake Oroville, California, 2011 to 2014. Lake Dongting in China. Crazy reduction in water quantity. New Mexico, artificial reservoir, Elephant Butte. Look, 1994 to 2013. Lake Bar al-Mil, Iraq, 2015. Aral Sea or Aral Lake, 1998 to 2014. It has almost disappeared. Iran Lake Oromei. Look here. Here it is inside the lake, the little island. Here it has now become part of the mainland. Kilimanjaro volcano, look. 1993 to 2000. Alaska, Muir Glacier, 76, 2003. Alaska, Muir Glacier, the same, another vision, 76, 2003. There is nothing left. Forests have grown up on these mountains that used to be covered with ice. McCarty Glacier, also Alaska, 1909 to 2004. There is no more ice, and here too there are woods. Pedersen Glacier, also Alaska. Here 1909. Here too there is no more ice, and here too there are woods. Holgate Glacier, 1900 and 2004. Carroll Glacier, also Alaska, also here all gone. Toboggan Glacier, also Alaska. Gigantic reduction of ice. Northwestern Glacier, also Alaska, nothing left. Meadows, trees. Paucald Glacier, Himalayas. Yosemite Park, USA. Lyell Glacier, 1983 to 2015. Corricalis Glacier, Peru. Here is the glacier now, here is a lake. 60 meters of ice thickness disappeared from 2000 to 2011 in just 11 years. Puncak Jaya Glacier, Indonesia, everything is gone. Inuit elders write to NASA, the Earth's axis has shifted. The Inuit are the Eskimos. The sun no longer rises where they had always seen it rise. They attribute these changes, the Inuit, to changes in the sky. The elders of the tribe claim that the sun no longer rises where they are used to seeing it rise every day. They warm up faster and last longer. Also, the stars and the moon are at different points in the sky, and this affects the temperatures. Article from Republica, which doesn't exactly shine to tell the truth. The Earth's axis is tilting south. It's due to the melting glaciers. The Earth is a body suspended in a vacuum. The law of its equilibrium is the law of gyroscopes. If you vary by a little, the counterweight that keeps it in that equilibrium, the gyroscope immediately rebalances. So as billions of tons of ice have disappeared, the Earth has shifted, because the counterweights have changed. So it is happening, and the extraterrestrials have announced it. But the powerful inveterate criminals, in order not to tell us the truth, create confusion. Hence, the controversy. Warming yes, warming no. And anyway, they use this emergency to make money, because they are sick in the head, and they dig their bunkers. But I say, if you destroy everything, what do you do in the bunker? The end of the rat. Have you seen the film 2012? The arcs? And there is the final scene with this ark that is saved. This beautiful sky. The sun. Yes, but what are you doing? There is nothing there. There are no roads. There is no commerce. There are no farmers. There are no factories. There is nothing. So once you go ashore, what are you going to do with all the money? Because only the big rich people get on the ark. What are you going to do? You will do the primitive life. You will have to go hunting. You will have to go fishing. You will have to pick berries. It's not a good end, but they don't want to change the system. Even Lord Rothschild said a few years ago, "We are sailing in uncharted waters, but not because of a financial issue, because of what is happening on the planet." Circle in the corn on the 4th of July, 1994, when extraterrestrials draw a sky. Here are the planets, the moon. They indicate dates, because with modern software, you just put in this planetary position, the software tells you the date. The date indicated the year 2000. In the year 2000, this crop circle appears, which is the energy field of the Earth, and it tells us the energy of the Earth will increase enormously. Now I show you a video of a comet impacting the Sun, or rather, no, not impacting the Sun. January 2002. The comet arrives, of course. Compared to the Sun, it is tiny. Look at the Sun's reaction. So, without impacting the Sun, it receives the frequency that the comet carries and makes this crazy solar explosion that, in fact, embraces the whole of the Sun. Look again. By the way, you see the tail of the comet, which is reversed, because the tail of the comet does not come from the forward direction, because there is a vacuum in space. It is the solar wind that creates the tail of the comet. Therefore, when the Sun overhangs, on the other side, it looks like it is going in reverse. And the same year, a crop circle appears in the crop circles, this time representing the Sun, indicating that that comet is going to vary the Sun's energy even more. The other crop circle indicated the year 2000. This is the Sun in 96. Look at the Sun in November of 2000. Its surface is extremely turbulent compared to how it was in 96, because the structural, dimensional, and rebalancing changes are managed by the Sun through the information they receive from comets. And it goes on. Here we still have a chaotic situation which then stabilizes. Explosions begin in the two bands, which are 19.5 degrees from the equator. This has a hyperdimensional dynamic. 19.5 degrees is the hyperdimensional point of transmission of energy. In fact, we have the largest solar explosions you see in the bands. Here is the solar equator in the two bands above. This occurs according to the law of the Platonic solids, which I have explained in other meetings. And look at the trend. Temperature, the red graph, of the Earth's surface, and look at the graph, the blue one, of the trend of solar storms. Do you see that they are almost superimposable? And therefore, why don't they tell us the truth about global warming? Because who stops the Sun? No one, and they, in order not to make people understand that a grandiose process of transformation is taking place that could make people change their idea of the system. They create confusion, two factions, divide and rule, and no one understands anything. So there too we have the pro-warming, the anti-heating, and nobody understands a thing. But they are hiding this irreversible fact, even that good man whom we have come to love over the past 2 years, Mr. Guglielmo Cancelli, or Portone in Italian, you see. Bill Gates wants to black out the sun to stop global warming. Ah, they told us. It's not the carbon dioxide that's aggravating, it's the sun. Then that he is mad, a disturbed person. We have understood that, and very dangerous. By the way, I have never understood why a man who sells software was asked about things that have to do with biology and medicine. But this one made us two balls like that on television, talking about viruses. But his only merit is that he has made a lot of money from software. So it is money that gives prestige, not skills. And this one has so much money that he finances everything, especially finances the WHO. One of the most egregious lies of power is that everything is only caused by human emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, and they exploit it to advance their globalist agenda. Beijing. I write this. This is the article. The tragedy is what we know: famines, fires, floods, poverty, damage amounting to $54 billion. The problem is not money. The problem is that there is no water, no food. What do I do with money when there is nothing to buy? We need resources, not money. If we were a fraternal mankind, we would extract, work, and distribute, not need money. Who do I have to pay to live? A banker? Mario Draghi? Have you seen the squirrel's tails, borrowing money from the ECB to buy acorns from oak trees? In the natural world, the planet provides resources, and its inhabitants consume them, that's all. Why do we have to pay someone? So it is one big collective hypnosis. Once a lady stood up. You, Caria, are a fool. You would tell me that we could live without an economic system. Sure, ma'am. What you do at home every day, you work, your husband works, you sit down to lunch, you don't make your children pay for lunch. Parents acquire resources, they distribute them, that's all. Because economy, as a word that comes from the Greek, means the things of home, our home, it's the planet, it's all ours. It doesn't belong to these people who print money with one hand and buy land or resources with the other. It's all ours. It is our fault if we allow these thugs to rule us. What is the problem? We cannot unite. Put two people from Earth together, and it's chaos. Wherever you are, two or more in my name, I will be in your midst. So we always unite in the name of Satan, because all you have to do is put two together, and immediately it's a mess. We are belligerent by nature. Instinctively. We are always belligerent. We never get along, not even between husband and wife. Big parties at the beginning, love, my love, love here, love there. Let's talk about it again in 20 years, 30 years. Shall we have children? A mess. There's something wrong with this society. I mean, with us, we have to change. The planet is ours. That's what extraterrestrials tell us. What's the problem? That a couple of ignorant, unemancipated parents have sex zoom zoom and bring out a body called a child, often a side effect, who will not emancipate because he is a child of ignorance. So if I don't emancipate myself, who will make a family to beget another who will be a slave like me? We must emancipate ourselves. And the process of liberation is a didactic process. First the didactic, then the practical. But first we must have new information, a new outlook on life. I met a character who is this one. Rolando Pelizza, October 2022. I believe Rolando Pelizza is one of the purest men I have ever met. A gigantic mind and a child's heart. Loving, innocent, passionate. Unfortunately, we did not spend much time together because he went to the other world after a few months. Rolando Pelizza, ever since he was young, has worked, collaborated with Ettore Majorana, the great scientist from Catania, who disappeared in 1928, a great mind and retired because he did not want to take part in the development of nuclear energy. Because he said, Majorana, it will be the terrible legacy we will leave to mankind. So, he dissociated himself from the Via Panisperna group, where he was the most brilliant mind of all. Segre, Amaldi, Fermi, etc., etc. Even Enrico Fermi himself said of Majorana that there are geniuses and that there are those who go beyond genius, and Majorana was one of them. And what did Majorana do? Take refuge in a convent. In Calabria, Serra San Bruno, he meets the young Rolando Palizza, and with the new physics and mathematics that Majorana develops, they build a fabulous machine. The whole story remains hidden. I learned something about it in the 90s from an engineer who took part in the machine's experiments, but I did not believe him because he spoke of disintegration, of antimatter, of the creation of energy from nothing, of a mutation of the material structure. I said, no way, you are telling me nonsense. And instead, it was true because he was part of, let's say, approached Rolando's group. The story then came out in December 2001, because Majorana wrote Palizza a letter authorizing him, to Rolando, to spread the truth. From now on, if you deem it appropriate, you are free to use my name, to spread our reports, writings, and photographs. Here, then, is a photo of Ettore Majorana on the 5th of August in 1996. I believe it was his birthday. Right, Piero? Where are you? There he is. There is a problem with this photo. He is 98 years old. No. How old was he? 96. Hector 90. He is 90 and Rolando is 58. This is the machine, of course, just the shape. This machine has been called the God machine because it does things that look like miracles. When Palizza told the scientist Zichichi about it, a scientist as it were, Zichichi was scandalized. He said, "It's not possible." There, when a scientist says it is not possible, he ceases to be a scientist and becomes a dogmatist. This machine could disintegrate matter without producing pollutants. So it could disintegrate all the rubbish on the planet, the plastic that is in the seas without producing pollution. Incidentally, that is like saying that the power stations that produced energy, we could run on rubbish. Imagine that. Nothing came of it. The machine could heat a metal and maintain it at a temperature for eternity. So you could heat, rather than bake bars of radioactive material, bars of steel, bring them up to 800 degrees, and those remain at 800 degrees for eternity. Energy could be generated for free and without pollution. Then, the machine could transmute matter, that is, transform matter from one thing into another. There is a video on YouTube where Rolando transforms a pallet of polystyrene cubes, no, foam rubber, turns them into 100% pure gold, which does not exist in nature. The fourth phase, even more miraculous, translation of matter and re-entry from another dimension, the rejuvenation effect of biological bodies, meaning we would have defeated old age too. The machine has been proposed to the Italian government since Andreotti's time. Even the files came out on WikiLeaks, thanks to Assange. Martin Azzoli was involved, an important figure in the army, who was also a big Mason. The Dutch government was involved, Piero, or Belgian, Dutch or Belgian, Piero, Belgian. The Belgian government was involved, NATO was involved, America was involved, Henry Kissinger, President Ford. They just wanted it as a weapon. They didn't give a fig that it could give free energy, make pollution disappear, nothing. And above all, it could heal the planet, because with transmutation, the machine could turn carbon dioxide into ozone and close the ozone hole. When I speak of the future, letter of Ettore Majorana of December 20, 2000, writing to Professor Erasmo Recami, who was the president of CNEN, who made the energy calculations of the machine and remained with his eyes like this, because the machine needs the battery of a car to be powered and can generate billions of megawatts with 24 volts. But it could heal the planet. When I speak of the future of our world, I am referring to the overheating of the planet, something I predicted as early as 1976, when I gave Rolando a detailed report on the subject and its consequences. From the first symptoms at the beginning of 2000 to the increase of the problem from 2010. After that, real environmental catastrophes can be expected. Now the year 2010 is long gone, because Rolando, whose machines, I think they have seized many, dozens of them. Each machine takes about 90,000 euros to make, have always been seized by the secret services, always. Stars and Stripes, then, with the collaboration of that whole bunch over there. He managed to hide a machine, which he teleguided from Italy, but the machine was in Spain. And in the months that he managed to have this machine, he managed to close the hole in the ozone layer. The powers that be knew that Rolando alone could do this, so they started to do a broad sweep until they found it and took it away from him. Then there was that guy called Oscar Valente who built one. But they seized that too. So what does the ozone hole do? That it is gigantic? This is its maximum extension in September 2006. The solar radiation, which already arrives in abnormal quantities for the speeches I have shown you, enters much more, because it is not shielded by the ozone layer, which has precisely this function. Therefore, the amount of heat that the planet receives is much higher. Therefore, this causes a much more rapid increase in the imbalances that will generate crazy catastrophes. Here in the room is Piero Maravalli. Maybe Piero, if you get up for a moment. Piero Maravalli was one of Rolando's close collaborators. I interviewed him on the 11th of November of the year 2022 about the whole thing, and the interview went well. I think the first part is reaching 200,000 views. Here, I leave it to Piero's words to explain what Ettore Majorana had foreseen.
Ettore Majorana wrote very clearly, if no remedy is taken, by the year 2000 irreversible changes will be measurable. From 2010, events, climatic phenomena, catastrophic out of the ordinary, will be visible at the level of ordinary mortals. But if nothing is done, from 2022 to 2024, due to the thinning of the ozone layer, and therefore the corresponding increase in the amount of radiation arriving.
Excuse me, I was saying Majorana, give me back my voice, he predicted 2010, but thanks to this closing work, Rolando bought us a few years. So thanks to Rolando, still the climate was tolerable, but as human activities continued to produce pollutants that generate consumption of the ozone layer, we are back to square one. We just bought some time. In fact, Rolando said, "But will you help me? Will you give me a hand to heal the planet?" They didn't give it to him. And so, now we are in the phase. As I said at the beginning, it began.
The Earth's layer, on this 18,000 meters area, Cap 2 phenomena occur. 1. is that the increased amount of radiation brings to the Earth an availability of heat that will continue to fuel the increase in temperature no matter what you do. And the other is that the radiation, which today is shielded, when it reaches the other layer of the atmosphere, where the water is, where the formation of the nuclei takes place, which then contain the water and make it fall in drops. These qualitative and quantitative changes will lead to the formation, and therefore to the precipitation of an amount of water equal to 250 cubic centimeters, 1 glass per drop, instead of 1 drop, 250. Where it happens, that phenomenon is deluge, uncontrollable. The amount of heat that accumulates at surface level will provide the cyclones with enough energy for the winds to reach 400 and even 600 kilometers per hour. At those wind speeds, where the winds pass, there won't even be vegetation left in its place.
Of course.
So, at that point, with these cataclysms that happen, where the Eternal Father decides, and not them, what happens to the populations that survive? But isn't the environment more livable? With what do you stop them? With machine guns. So it will happen. Then it will trigger a process of displacement and tensions that are difficult to control. So, we will be heading for disaster. And the only tool is the machine. But to use the machine, you need a humanity that deserves it, a humanity that corresponds to those values that Ettore Majorana codified back in the 60s.
So it has begun. Power did not allow the machine to be used. We are at the point of no return. Article of the 24th of May, 2023. Floods, an epoch-making event that has never happened before in the country. Did you understand what Piero said, referring to Majorana? Drops as big as glasses, but with winds at 600 kilometers per hour, it's not just a matter of taking the grass out of the ground. Cars fly, things fly. So a frightening situation will arise. Everything will become projectile. Vice President Priolo in the courtroom. 350 million cubic meters of water fell in those days. 23 rivers flooded, 1,000 landslides, 100 counties affected, 63 construction sites on the waterways, all routes closed. I have removed a list that I already showed at the conference in Pescara. You can find it on the YouTube channel. Incredible water bomb in Carbonia, the city submerged by rain. Sardinia, Chiesi, cemetery niches collapse, rivers of water, water in houses. A few days ago, Macerata, water bomb and flooding caused by rain. It had never happened. Every downpour becomes a catastrophe, because structurally, the things we have been built them in relation to the norm before the atmospheric phenomena. If the weather phenomena change, the architecture does not hold either. Therefore, we are heading for a truly dramatic situation. Now, where is hope? There are these beings who want to help us and who have the technology to do so without any problem. But they only ask one thing: you have to change. You have to unite. You have to become an active part of society. You can't just sit around like a fly on the car window from your comfort zone, because our comfort zone will be swept away. If you, The extraterrestrials say this because they obey the Eternal Father. If you change, we will help you. Indeed, with our help there will be in the future a great human society that will live in peace, love and brotherhood, and above all, in justice, because if there is no justice, there can be no love, there can be no brotherhood, there can be no peace, because our world's so full of wars, and wars are caused by injustice. The most insane thing is that the major powers spend frightening amounts of money on weapons, armies, structures to defend the privileges of the few. But excuse me, let's take away the armies, let's distribute, let's appease the injustices. Nobody wants to go to war. We all want to live. What do we want? Bottom line, a home, resources, food, clothes, culture, to be well. You see, the powerful don't. They are sick. They must rule. They must feel like gods. So for those who have so much money that they won't spend it in 100 lifetimes, money is power, and that's all. You see Soros, you see Bill Gates, you see Elon Musk's Tesla, you see all these people. For them, money no longer has the function, as it has for us, to survive, to buy a car, to pay bills. For them, money is merely the tool which they express their power over our skin with. Now, going back to the subject of the sun, of course, these solar explosions, of which there have never been so many before, after the year 2000, they affect the whole solar system. For example, in these photos from NASA, this is Mars, so the solar explosion, you see, has affected Mars. We are very close to Mars. So with the situation that we have explained, that Piero explained, with the hole in the ozone layer, the amount of energy that enters is so much more, therefore this energy that the sun gives off also invests the other planets. In fact, global warming is all over the solar system. We saw earlier the great changes on Jupiter that are triggered, then, let's say, amplified by cometary impacts. But we have a gigantic storm in hexagonal form at Saturn's south pole. We have changes in one of Neptune's moons. The water on Mars is melting. This is the storm at Saturn's south pole. It is twice the size of planet Earth, because Saturn is also gigantic. These are photos of satellites sent on Mars. You see, the water on Mars is melting, because there is so much water on Mars. Look, the reduction of the south pole of Mars. So what is happening on Earth is also happening there. But there, not in a chaotic, catastrophic form like here. This is Neptune. Look how the atmosphere has changed from 96 to 2002. The winds of Venus. Look at the acceleration they have taken, because the amount of energy that the sun is pouring out into the system is abnormal compared to the past. Enormous atmospheric vortexes extend over the south pole of Venus, and there are great transformations up to the limits of the solar system. Because due to this increase in energy emitted by the sun, from the year 2000, this energy is also reaching the extreme limits of the solar system. With the Hubble telescope, very important variations have been recorded on the surface, to the point that, just as it did for Jupiter, what does NASA do? It sends a satellite to understand and film what's happening. The New Horizons satellite, also here Juno for Jupiter, here New Horizons was launched on the 19th of January 2006 by NASA and reached Pluto, which is about 6.09 billion kilometers away from us. It reached it on the 14th of July 2015, 9.5 years of travel. And these are the high-definition images of Pluto. It is heart-shaped, this vast area of the planet, and an atmosphere is forming on Pluto, which has been photographed. the photo of Pluto's atmosphere. This is information that does not pass into the mainstream. Yes, they say it, but nobody understands. Look how beautiful. This is Pluto. A message from sky to earth written by Giorgio Bongiovanni on the 12th of July, 2015. One day, not far away, of course, a message he receives from extraterrestrials. One day, not far away, this small planet of your solar system will host life in all its most beautiful three-dimensional manifestations: mineral, vegetable, animal, human. The small big sun Jupiter, Zeus, will awaken from its long apparent sleep and give life and prosperity to the distant planets: Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and three others that your science has not yet recognized as such. One day on Earth, the night will be day and the day will shine because of the fact of Jupiter's ignition, when, that is, the inhabitants of the blue planet who have inherited the kingdom of Christ will experience joy in their spirits and gladness in their souls, because every sunrise and sunset will enjoy the vision of two suns, the Father and the Son, who will shine with heroic fury and immense love upon the spirit, soul, and body of the inhabitants of the earth. Pluto's heart is the herald of this truth: peace, a solar genius. Who is the same one who gave Eugene that message I read at the beginning? Namely, Mr. Adoniesis. We are in closing. Then we move on to questions. Obviously. So, this is the whole part where we saw what it means, or what the words of the prophecy mean: a new heaven, a new earth. The day. There shall be no more day, that is, there shall be no more day-night, says Zechariah. These are radical and great changes in the entire solar system, and not just on planet Earth, but human events are happening on planet Earth. For example, in Revelation, it speaks of the great battle of Armageddon, the last war between good and evil, of which, as I told you at the beginning, I speak at length in that seminar. The last war of the Antichrist. Look at the concurrence of dates. 18th of January 2022, the eve of the Orthodox Epiphany, in the city of Gurevsk in southern Siberian Russia, a gigantic cross of light is photographed in the sky, drawn by the sun, of course. The word epiphany is a Greek term meaning manifestation, and was used in a religious sense by the Greeks to denote the action of a deity who manifested his presence through a sign. Here, this happens on the eve of Epiphany because it is a sign. Again, Giorgio Bongiovanni receives this message: the omen, the sign of the Son of Man, of the Messiah, the Son of God. Behold, behold. Look and meditate seriously on this image. The solar cross in Russia. From space and from the same place, on that day not far off in time, there shall appear in the sky. There shall appear in the sky of your whole world the golden cross of fire, the sign of the return of the Son of the Holy Spirit, of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Matthew, chapter 24. Then shall appear in the sky the sign of the Son of Man, my only begotten Son. On that day and at that hour, all mankind will beat its fist in its chest and say, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. But it will be too late. That cross and that divine fire will be the sign of the condemnation of the murderers of life and the salvation of the elect, the good and the righteous. In Siberia, in the territory of Holy Mother Russia, the fiery cross of the Son of God represents a great omen. Do not forget it, and do not underestimate it. Beware, mighty ones of the world. Do not attempt to bring Russia to its knees. You would be making the most serious mistake in the history of your humanity. Beware. The message of the Holy Mother of Fatima would enter its most tragic executive phase if the devil of temptation were to persuade the powerful to start a war that would have neither winners nor losers, but only the holocaust of a lost humanity. My writing servant is the music of the instrument that vibrates my celestial notes. I am Adonaisus, and I am among you to protect, with the wings of the great eagle, the woman clothed with the sun, who is the Holy Mother, Mary, and her people. Date, 2050 of January, 2022. Exactly 1 month later, Russia invades Ukraine, because NATO provoked it. So we have entered the last battle. We have entered Armageddon. They want to defeat Russia. But no nation, equipped with a nuclear arsenal, will accept defeat. Rather, it will destroy everything and everyone. This will happen, but the divine power will intervene with the heavenly armies, which are these beings that, however, continue to manifest themselves. A couple of photos. This is Manuel Sanchez, Juanito Juan, at this moment. The person who is generating the most important evidence of the presence of this aviation that comes from the cosmos, that continues to give signs of its presence. This is, it's 3 shots of an orb. It was 2, actually, 12th of May, 2023. Do you see the object? At one point, a red light comes on, and I leave. I read the words of Juanito Juan, who told the story. There were 2 spheres. One was more withdrawn on one side, so he didn't photograph it. He only managed with his mobile phone to take this one. My wife and I were in the garden. We were pruning plants, removing the dry parts, when suddenly we saw the spheres in the sky standing still above us. Then, in the nearest sphere, a red light came on, a kind of laser pointing at our bodies, our chests, our heads. Then, the light turned blue, and when it moved upwards, and this can be seen in the photos, the light turned violet. Again, it was like a laser that traveled down my body from my head to my chest and down to my feet. You could see the light well, even though the beam was very thin, and it was as if it was studying us. Another photo by Juanito Juan, 30th of May. The spheres are up here. You see? 2 metal spheres. This is the enlargement. And another sphere. These are 2 frames from a film. It's a metal sphere just above the wall of Juanito's backyard, standing there. In the video you can see it dancing in, let's say, levitation, or in, let's say, anti-gravity. I'm done. These are the seminars where you will find a lot more information on the topics I have covered. The awakening of Jupiter, the heart of Pluto, from the heart of Pluto to the heart of the Sun, the cosmic signs of the Great Change, and the true origins of man and his evolution according to extraterrestrial science. Thank you, friends. Now a person with a microphone will come by. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to ask these 2 questions, basically.
Yes?
Expression which we find in the Bible, you met Alpha with Omega, would that be these cycles which you have talked about so far? The questioner is a foreign lady who, for obvious reasons, expresses herself badly.
Alpha and Omega are the beginning and the conclusion of the Kingdom Project.
So, that's exactly what you spoke about.
The beginning and the end.
Another question I take advantage of that is also this great priest from Mount Athos. To me,
It's not Mount Athos.
in 6-7 September last year, I received the information that from 8 September starts, let's say, meeting in, arriving there, or approaching us of this meeting between Alpha and Omega. Is that true?
So, when...
Thank you.
Yes, when there are dates, you have to be very careful. Why? Because maybe I'm Peppino. One Sunday I get a headache. Instead of going to the beach, I say, "Wow, there's this Korea who talks a lot of nonsense. Bah, I'll go and listen to him. And because Korea convinces me, he says a lot of things. From the way I come out of the conference, I start to change my life, or I don't do anything. So since we, or the extraterrestrials, give us a date, they are violating the law of free will, because I can change. To change is an act of creativity, of will. I, for example, know Eugenio Siragusa. I am one of the 1,000 people who knew Eugenio, but the vast majority continued to mind their own business. I changed my life. So it's up to me. Nobody can stop me from changing. Christ says, at most, they will take away your body, but you are eternal anyway. Says the Lord, beware of him who has power over the body and over the spirit, for that one will pull your ears heavily, who is the eternal Father. So dates are never given. Cycles, periods are given. So this is the period of change. The change does not happen in a day. For example, I put a boiler on the fire, and until the water reaches 100 degrees, it stays there still. Then, all of a sudden, it starts to boil. But it is not like the phenomenon happened in that second. There was a necessary time where that phenomenon then became manifest. So we are inside a cycle where eventually, by summation of the give and take of our choices, we will come to a boil. But that's not the eighth. And then there is another aberrant and wrong way of evaluating these things. So many people ask me, when is Jesus coming back? And when will there be the big contact? And when is the asteroid coming? But by the time these things happen, it will be too late. Now is the time to act, because when Jesus comes and shows up, because he is already here. I said it on Red Ronnie. All hell broke loose. The Lord is on earth because it is he who coordinates all this work. There are people who have met him physically. And Jesus is a human being, the God-man.
Where did you meet Jesus?
You said that. Let's say I've had experiences. Is that okay? Because if here, then my idea is, if something exists, I have to see it with my own eyes, because when I have seen and touched something, no one can deceive me anymore. That is why I ask the extraterrestrials, show yourselves because I want to collaborate with you. But do you really exist? If, as Eugenio said, there was this grand plan to save humanity, boy, I was interested in participating. Because, as a poor human being, what could I do? But if these beings help me, maybe 3 people I will be able to convince them. So they don't give dates. And there is a time that is in the mind of the Father and the Son. And maybe the day and the time is already there. But they don't tell us because they would spoil our choice, because Christ must catch us red-handed, either in evil or in good. He says, I will come like a thief in the night. So if he comes like a thief, it's not that he says, oh, watch out, today at 10:30, 10:45 at most, I'll come and rob your house. Heh, I'm waiting for the thief with a broom. So dates make little sense. It makes sense to become aware of a cycle, and begin within this cycle, while we still can. A transformation of our life. Otherwise, there is no point. So I have brought you evidence from NASA, certain scientific facts, Jupiter. Then, you see, me, what I could do, I did. And thanks to the help of these beings who accepted contact, so many years ago, a process of collaboration began. So the things I do, they ask me. I don't go my own way. I don't have their project in my hand. They tell me, jump, and Korea jumps. They tell me, down, and I lay down.
And can we collaborate too?
Now sure. Here in Ancona, there's a group that carries out a process of knowledge and action. Ora et labora. If not, there's no point. We make small talk, blah, blah, blah. We have to. Because in the end, society does not exist. There are individual human beings, first and last name, who form society. But the judgment will be done individually. So I have to do the work. If others do it, fine. It is not a question of piling up, but it's obvious. If I do it with other friends with whom I team up, it's easier. We support each other. If one goes into a crisis, the others help him. If there is a problem, everyone helps to solve the problem. It is much easier, united. So these beings asked for groups to be formed because they want to see what we can do. Because if we are not able to cooperate and get along, they will not save us. They will not help us. But if we, striving with goodwill, try to overcome our belligerent relational vices, they will give us a hand. I assure you, and I say this with full knowledge of the facts, because it is a process that I have experienced for 34 years. It is very difficult. Put two earthlings together. It's easier for the dog to get along with the cat.
Absolutely.
But we can do it. I collaborate with young people, other people. With Giorgio, we collaborate. In fact, Giorgio has been an important part of my development because, thanks to the stigmata, I have been able to travel the world, especially in the early years, and enter places where no one else enters. Just think. In the 90s, we were received by the vice president of Gorbachev's Constitutional Court. I was still a railwayman then. I mean, you don't enter those places. We met scientists. Here is Mara Testaseca, who was with me on that trip. We met scientists, astronauts, military personnel. You don't get into such places. Why did these things happen? Because when Our Lady appeared to Bongiovanni, she told him, "Go out into the world and do this." A boy of 26 said, "But mother, I mean, no one will calculate me." And she said to him, "I will open the doors for you." Here then, Bongiovanni meets Gorbachev in Madrid. "President, can I come to Russia?" "Yes, come." The Secret Service then, of course, secretly tailed us. Then finally they showed up, and this young lieutenant colonel named Zirkin showed up. "From now on, we have been studying you. You are good people, however. I am with you now." I mean, not even, it's like a 007 movie. I've lived it though, so cycles are important, friends. Now is the time. We have resources. We have time. There is still enough calm to be able to do it. But when the big problems start, it will be very, very difficult because we will have to run from mornings to evenings to survive. And eventually it will all happen. It is happening. What did God tell you? He will destroy the world. Then it starts to rain, and those who did not enter the ark will all perish. It is the same process, and Jesus says, it will be worse than in the days of the flood. Then, free will. I don't want to convince anyone. I don't proselytize. I have lived, and I live a crazy adventure. I only believe it because it is my adventure. If Caria told me, I think he's hiding something, that's not true. I am the son of a poor Sardinian peasant family. 3rd and 5th grade. My parents. They left in recent years. I met exceptional people who had exceptional experiences, and that allowed my life to become exceptional too. Simply, application of the law of AIC, a famous scientific law that many of you will know. Those of you who do not know the law of AIC, raise your hand and I will explain it to you. It is an acronym. It means get off your ass. It always works. It's a joke I borrowed from a very dear friend of mine, who passed away, a Sicilian. His name was Enzo Tata, and he was one of the first people who knew of that group who knew Eugenio Siragusa. Please, another question. Yes.
Hello, Pierre.
Hello.
Some time ago, you said that in this life it's possible to set the time of permanence after your departure and then reschedule it,
Yes.
even the next life.
Yes.
In what way?
It's not exactly like that.
Okay.
So science, by its very nature, what does it give us? Technology, right? So I discover a scientific law, leverage, and therefore, when I have to move something, instead of doing it with mere physical force, I use leverage. And thanks to this knowledge of physics, I can move heavier weights than I could do with my arms alone. So spiritual science, which explains how the great laws in life and death work, if I understand, through study and research, what the process of the afterlife is for, what we experience, why we experience it, how it works, I can develop methods to shorten our stay in the afterlife. Because in the afterlife, in fact, we do not evolve. In the afterlife, we almost completely lose our free will, and we are subjected by the law of nature to the effects of the causes we experienced in life. Once we have, shall we say, gone through all that process, then the other process we go through is the preparation for the return in incarnation. All right? So it's a scientific fact. It's not a religious fact. Because Jesus was a layman, in the end, he was the son of a carpenter and a girl. Mary was 17 years old when she became pregnant with the Lord. So, if I know, Marilisa, these things, it is not that I program the day of rebirth, I can shorten it. By carrying out here with conscience, according to how the law asks me, some work that I save myself from doing in the hereafter. Therefore, I go to the hereafter. I stay there. In the hereafter one can stay there for centuries. Hey, my darling, now here, heh heh heh. I mean, it's a bit of a...
Don't you remember that?
Huh?
Don't you remember that?
Of course I remember, I do.
No.
No, in the afterlife you remember everything. On the contrary, we die when we incarnate, because, you see, question, but if we really are eternal, why the hell don't I have to remember it? Because we incarnate on planets with violent societies like this, because we have to make peace with those we have offended. So our friendship, parental, filial, couple relationships are dictated by the law of compensation. We have to make peace. So if I have brutalized a girl, she is reborn with me and becomes my daughter because I must learn to love her. I must make amends for my mistake. So the mercy of divine law makes us forget. Let's take another example. If I, during the war, had been a Nazi running Auschwitz and gassed you all, like hell you would come to the conference. He says, who? That one? No, that one killed us. So out of mercy the law of nature takes away our memory, so that we can make peace. I met a lady years ago who I never saw again, but for a while I was seeing her. She remembered everything. She says, Pierre, it's a curse. Why? Any person I meet, between me and that person there, has been suffering. You go crazy. She says, I, at times, have to lock myself in the house and not go out because I can't take it anymore, because I remember the violence that I have given, that I have suffered. Instead, God, with the process of death and rebirth, takes away the memory and gives us a new opportunity to do what should be the most obvious thing: to love each other. Each one of us thinking of the good of our neighbor. We do the opposite. Enough. But why not change? Maybe if we change, something happens. Let's try something different. Maybe it rhymes with us. It stays with us. I stayed with it, because we are so accustomed to the belligerent process that when you begin to systematically experience the opposite process, The laws of nature give an insane propulsive force to change, much faster than in evil, because evil rose against the love laws of the universe. Good rose in favor, therefore, travels faster. So within one incarnation, if you change it to good, you can do unimaginable things. It happened to me like that. Then, you will say, there are the extraterrestrials, but those are always there. They are our older brothers. Humanity has always been accompanied by these angels. They are not astronauts from other worlds, they are much more beings. But, I repeat, let us study the booklets. Let us read and form a new culture. From there we start. But change is possible. It is up to us to do it or not to do it. Free will. You are welcome. By the way, I met Jesus at the bar the other day.
Hi, Pier.
Oh, Salvo, hi.
Hi.
Salvo lived, do you still live?
I still live.
In Santa Maria la Stella, which was one of the towns in Etna where my spiritual father Eugenio Siragusa lived. Go on, Salvo.
On this very subject. Dear Eugenio left so much.
So much.
So much. When I hear you, I don't need to be convinced. Because, anyway, growing up in that country, the history and so on, the experiences, whatever you want, I find it hard, on the other hand, to expose the truth to others, but not my truth. Because it could be something that you want to impose on others. But instead, it's the truth that you have it here in front of you, and others try to erase you or ignore you, maybe on a subject that maybe this is an argument to change our souls, that our thoughts.
So the question, what is it?
So the question is, I personally, from you, from those who obviously know more than me, from those who have lived, had experiences much more stronger than mine, how can we help others?
It's a process.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you. It's a process of free will. You see, the Lord in the Gospel gives us a lot of advice. He reveals universal laws, but he also gives us practical advice. I don't have to convince anybody. That would be an offense because I violate the law of free will. So, I can only introduce myself, offer a service to the public. I am in Ancona on that date. Then you see. So this hall could be full, half full, or overflowing as it was, free will. It is a personal choice, therefore, I can only offer. Because the process that makes an intelligence sensitive enough to find topics that are massively thought to be interesting is a very slow process. It takes centuries. So you have the impression that you are looking at a human being, but the body deceives you, because it is the spirit that counts. So that spirit may have only been on earth for a few incarnations, so it's a spirit child. It can't get it right with a hammer. So we offer because, when the person in his or her innermost being understands that that thing is important because it has evolved, he or she is ready to make the change, if he or she wants to, or to fall back into the oblivion of the great indistinct mass. So, we can only offer salvo. I used to do some crazy things. At the time there was a newspaper that was published in Porto Sant'Elpidio. It was called, curiously enough, We Are Not Alone. And it was a newspaper that aimed to disseminate the messages of Eugenio Siragusa, and then of knowledge, as I did today, scientific discoveries, and so on and so forth. And there was a We Are Not Alone, where on the cover there is a picture of a being of light, of Adoniasis. The title is, The Sun is Inhabited, because beings of light live on the sun. Christ himself lives on the sun. God, the Father Adonai, is there for this, the solar logos. What did I do as a railwayman? I used to take 4 or 5 copies of We Are Not Alone and put them on the compartment tables. And I said, somebody's going to be pissed off. And what happened was that someone would say, what is that? The inhabited sun. Who's the fool? And I'd say, if you want, I'll explain. And I'd go like this, naive disclosure. I remember one day, of course I used to break the balls of all my railway colleagues. Then when I came here to the Ancona compartment, because before I left my job I asked for a transfer, and they transferred me. So I worked for quite a few years here in Ancona as a driver. But they all avoided me, because I was the crazy one. No joke, my colleagues avoided me. They would say, who Korea? No, I don't want to be there. He's such an asshole, with aliens. The truth. Then, at the end, the extraterrestrials told me, get off the train, go, for we need you free. And so, a process began whereby a poor railwayman became an international documentary filmmaker. Imagine the madness. All self-taught, and I didn't study. I didn't go to film school. I never went to software school. Yet I edited, I was a director. I wrote the scripts, at first by hand. My documentaries won prizes even in the United States. In fact, there was a period that was commonplace. I would make a documentary. I knew I would propose it in the United States. In competitions, I was sure I was going to win. In fact, one day the event organizer told me, Korea, listen, but next time come with a suitcase, because I had won 3. Another year they told me, because I had won too many, they said, you choose, which one should we award you? So, obviously, I tell you by anecdote, I don't give a damn. Anyway, at the end of the day, human awards are one jerk telling another jerk, you're the best, then maybe there's the bribe underneath, the red carpet, all this bullshit here. If I am worth something, the universe, the divinity, must recognize it. That's where recognition has value. But if it belongs to another human being, so we offer freely, because you see, in the process of evolution, sometimes suffering is indispensable. Therefore, if I insist on helping a person and take away his suffering, I'm doing damage. I'm damaging him, because maybe that suffering will awaken him, make him understand things. I have experienced this myself. Above all, suffering teaches us where matter, the enjoyment of material goods, gives us insensitivity and selfishness. So, let us offer. Then Jesus, what does he say? Do not give holy things to dogs and do not throw pearls to swine, for they will chew them up and then spit them out and tear you to pieces. And when the Lord uses the term swine dog, it is not so much derogatory. He is telling you don't harp on undeveloped people. Shake the dust off your shoes and go find another one. Why? Maybe while you are hammering that poor Christ who doesn't want to know, there is another who might be awakened who says, Bo, but where is the truth here?
Hi, Pier Giorgio.
Hello.
So, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name's Eduardo.
Your name?
Eduardo.
Ah, Eduardo? Then we've spoken.
Yes, that's right. I'm 20 years old, so I guess I'm
Man, you're old.
very old.
We have one 20-year-old.
Tonight I brought my cousin with me, who is 14, so even younger than me, and my father.
So much for wanting to run away right away.
I have a problem,
Just?
so many problems. I came here to find an answer. A, I have many friends, my age, even older, and I feel that they don't respond when chance, when fate presents itself to them, and they stay still. Above all, when someone like me, age is a number, tries to go up to them and tell them certain things, but they don't understand. Can you give me a hand, advice in the practical, in the deepest, to ask these people kindly? It's funny, but it's painful for me because I'm sensitive. I understand these things.
So, Eduardo, The processes that unite us, effectively in all the varied forms of human affectivity, friendship, falling in love, etc., etc., kinship. So those bonds that even bring us together as father-son or bring us together as husband-wife, etc., etc., are processes generated by causes. These causes are subject to laws of nature, which I have managed in a certain way and has determined that situation there. But if I go and change the causes, these bonds dissolve. So my answer is, in making this choice, I changed everything. Even family members came against me. Not even one of my former friends is left. On the contrary, when I started to hang out with Siragusa and then Bongiovanni, they were convinced that I was psychologically ill. That is, he went crazy. That is, the one who only thought about amusements, pussy, and so on and so forth, clothes. Yes, potato dumplings. They say, he went crazy, 2 balls. Then, well, I was wrong, Salvo, I was wrong. I made 2 balls like that and chained them to the chair. Why Jesus, the extraterrestrials? I tortured them.
Forgive me for a second.
So let me finish.
Yeah, sorry.
So those who don't accept the truth are not your family. Jesus says, at one point Jesus is with the apostles, his mother arrives, with other people also his brother, because Joseph had children. So he had half-brothers Jesus, and the apostles, they say, Lord, your mother is there. He? Who? Holy Mary. But my family members, my parents are only those who do the will of the Father. So if I am ignorant and I do my will making mistakes and therefore committing crimes, I will attract with that energy a human situation of the affections, the wife or the fiancé. But if I change and they don't accept, dividing us is a natural thing. We cannot continue to be together, because I have changed parish. So it's not that I don't love my friends anymore. I do love them, but it's pointless for me to hang out with them. They live and deal with issues that no longer interest me. Instead, today the sun never sets on my friends because I have friends all over planet Earth.
So in this case, you're telling me that being alone is almost a cure compared to being...
Being alone is a passing moment. Today I have to run because there are a lot of people who would like to be with me. So it's a fact of char. Suffering is just the change of state, going out of a certain context and into another. The change, because the natural laws create a flywheel of energy, which is what drives our lives, our relationships, work, and so on, okay? This flywheel has its own inertia. So before it slows down and reverses course, and therefore our life changes, there is a phase that can be longer or shorter depending on my condition, where I have to endure the abandonment of certain situations and the creation, the birth of other situations. It is a normal transitory phase. That is, if I am cold, I have to go and find a jacket. I cover myself, but it is not that, because I put on the jacket, I am immediately hot. There is a moment when the body has to warm up, because I have changed the situation. So this is something that happens in a short time, but in life the same thing happens. You just have to give it the right amount of time, and have the strength, that means the guts, to withstand the change.
I thank you. Thank you very much.
I sat down because I'm so tired. I went to bed at 4 in the morning and I slept quite a bit.
Hello, Pier Giorgio?
Who's that? Get up and walk around.
I'm curious to understand how asteroids, comets fertilize planets, or the sun, in this case, Jupiter.
Comets carry water molecules. Water is the mediator that stores information and transmits it. In fact, after the Shoemaker-Levy impact, scientists were amazed because the entire southern hemisphere of Jupiter was filled with water molecules. And therefore, water carries information. The solar system is full of water. The Earth is ninth. Maybe people think that the Earth has more water than the whole solar system. Wrong. There are planets where there is much more water than on Earth, and the waters read and transmit frequencies. These are experiments, and Benveniste did it. Then Masaru Emoto repeated it. The virologist who died, Montagnier. Imagine, Montagnier took a test tube of water, put it inside a coil, so magnetic frequency, and put I can't remember if it was a virus or a bacterium that has its own frequency. All right? He transmitted that frequency over the internet to a lab that was in another part of the world, where there was another coil with a test tube in it, with bits of that DNA. The water reconstructed it in its entirety, because the water in the test tube where there was the entire sequence of that DNA virus transmitted it to the water that only had a few bits of it, and the water reconstructed it in its entirety, the entire strand. Of course, they're hiding this from us. It would be the end of Big Pharma, using water, which is the principle of homeopathy. So, comets. Comets transmit frequency through what is the most obvious and important mediator of life, which is water. On the moon, there's a lot of water. I mean, you guys have no idea how much these guys are fucking with us. I mean, we live in a world, when you find out the truth, you are hurt. We live in a world of nonsense. And they are cruel. They are cruel. The dead that are in Ukraine, said a leading American figure, are a very good investment for the United States. That's how they think, but people die there. Guys in their 20s, Ukrainians, Russians. I mean, we live in a world of appalling crimes. And we, if we don't react and put our hands in, we will be held as accomplices to crimes against humanity. And God's judgment will be very heavy, because we are all human society. It's not someone who is more society than others. Draghi is not more society than you or me. We are worth the same in the eyes of the Creator. He for what he does, I for what I do, you for what you do. These are very important speeches. Last two questions. We can't make it friends. At 8 o'clock, the hall must be free. The boys must dismount. First. Yeah, quick. Quick question.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pierre, for doing this. Nice to meet you. Danny, I'm 33. The Jesus years. I wanted to say, basically, the planet. If there was no planet Malona and Lucifer with all his disciples, right? Was there evil on Earth, or had it already entered the fourth dimension?
That's a question that doesn't have an answer, because that dramatic event causes such a variation that maybe you and I were rebel angels and we're purging. Who knows? Evil. You see, there is venial sin and mortal sin. Venial sin is error by experimentation. So I understand that by doing a certain thing I make you suffer and I change. If I say I do this, so I steal his wallet, that is a mortal sin because I did it with conscience, with devilishness. So evil is necessary because in the initial stage, where we are spiritual children, maybe a child shoots someone but is not condemned because he is not conscious. Obviously, then it is explained to him that in short, one does not do it. But when we grow up and do evil, knowing that we are doing evil, and there we are condemned. So evil in the sense of doing wrong is natural, especially in the early stages of evolution. But repeating the mistake knowing that you are doing wrong, that is a serious offense. Therefore, as far as our history is concerned, we are all guilty, also because one came who went to the cross, innocent, to tell us, you must change. And it says it clearly in the Gospel, if you do not change, you will all perish. Also that he died to help us. You must change. That is, I have saved you, I have healed you, but sin no more or worse will happen to you. This is the law then, I repeat. Each one must confront himself and his conscience. It is not up to me. I do not have to convince anyone. I bring data, facts, reasoning, then,
If he wants to evolve,
if it wants to evolve, but there is a dramatic process going on, violent things will happen. Now they are violent for us Italians. But in Africa, in other parts of the world, the apocalypse has been happening for centuries. Go to the favelas of Brazil or Peru. There they are in apocalypse because of us, because we prevent developing countries from developing, because we rob them with corruption, violence, resources, raw materials that we do not have. So our prosperity drips blood. If we do not use this wealth to make a change in our lives and in our society, we are accomplices. When Eugenio was giving me these speeches, I was worried. Then I thought, it's only a matter of time. But Jesus, who I know is there, one day I'll find him in front of me, in front of the Lord, and it will happen. It's just a matter of time. And the day he asks me, Caria, what have you done? What do I tell him? I've been a railwayman. I've been thinking. And what does he say? You are not worthy of me. Get out. And I said to myself, but how would I feel? If Jesus asks me that question, I'd feel bad. I'd feel dead in front of such a wonderful being. So I said, I better do something. And I started putting, we are not alone on the train tables. So one of my mottos, have the humility to think big. Because if you have power, if you have power as I have, social, don't let your ego mount up. Remember that you are all servants of someone who is more, higher than us. Therefore, we must have the humility to think big. I once did a meditation in front of the UN building. I was in New York as the guest of an American researcher called James Carman. Carman, then, an evocative name. I said to him, listen, James, this morning I want to go to the UN. Will you take me there? He tells me, yes, it's nearby. I was a guest at his house. We went there. I was with a former friend called Antonio Urzi. I think you've heard of him. And what did I want to do? I wanted to see the representatives of the powerful. So I stood there at the entrance gate and watched people go in and out and said, that one has a belly. That one, from the way he walks, I think he has a prostate problem. Why does he do that? He has dandruff. In the end, I said to myself, but these powerful people are flesh and blood like me, and they do a lot of damage. They should not be in charge. We have to make a revolution and replace them, because they do their job badly. They are bad managers, very bad people. We have to start, me, go figure, a nobody a process to take their chair out from under their ass, because they broke our balls. They have to go. And if they don't go away, if they don't go away. There is a powerful one who is our ally, who will drive them out with ropes of fire. His name is Jesus Christ. So we have already won. It is only a personal problem. All right, friends. I assure you that by tapping into universal knowledge and laws, our lives can become extraordinary and not a mundane life that counts for nothing. Slaves to someone who holds the joystick of society. We must believe it and do. Belief and doing produce miracles. Believe in it and do. Believe in it because of the data that we provide, that extraterrestrials provide. And do it because if you don't do it, nothing changes. Praying and not working is a very serious mistake, because God feels as you were making a fool out of him. He says, "But what do you pray for? You are a hypocrite, and you do nothing. I mean, do you want me to do the work for you? But God, it's not like he's a dumb parent doing the classwork for his child who remains ignorant. God, you have to study. The Father says to you, I have given you life. I have created you. Try for yourself, but with your ass, not his divine." Thank you, friends. To the gentleman, go on, shoot. Try it.
Try. Now it goes. My name is Fabio, and I wanted to confirm and ask you if you have ever had this experience of the memory of water. I mean, I have. I have tried it. And in the rehearsals, among the rehearsals I did, one day I opened on YouTube the films where there are streams flowing, and I tried because I needed those noises for metaphony. And in rehearsing, though, I realized that voices were coming out of those streams, murmurs. By slowing down those voices, slowing down the speed of the water, those voices emerge even louder. There are the voices recorded at that moment. There are all the streams recording the voice. So,
Nature is governed, because nature is perfect, because the animal always knows what to eat and what not to eat. It knows how to build its house. It knows how to do everything, because there is a divine intelligence in nature, because the kingdoms of nature are ruled by archangels. Nature is sentient and intelligent, more so than human beings. Then Masaru Emoto I met. I interviewed him in person. Then I never published the interview. Sooner or later I will publish it. Thank you, friends. Thank you again.